Vasudevaya. Narayanam Nam. We can say this together. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Tirayet Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan, superposed human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and Srila Prabhupada, translator and commentator, by regular attendance of classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service unto the devotees. All this troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. Loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise and transcendental song is established as an irrevocable fact. Hare Krishna. So we're on chapter 29, text 36. We have a few verses to and we'll go through them. Do you remember anything from yesterday? Can you remember anything how the chapter's flowing here? It's hard, but do your best. Yes.
There's distinctions of what life is like. Oh yes. The distinctions of like what life is more.
And the different values of people and their different gradations. Yes, correct. Prabhu?
You're not allowed to have dogs and cats in your house.
That's what you got from yesterday's class, right? Did you know that Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a dog? And it had a name too. It was a named dog. His dog's name was Tiger. But he did stay outside of the house. And what about Lord Chaitanya? Did he have a dog? There's a story of when there was a dog that gave birth nearby, so there was all these puppies around, and Lord Chaitanya took what everyone considered was the cute, all his friends, was with his friends. Lord Chaitanya took the cutest puppy, so all his friends were kind of like mad at him for taking the cutest one. But then when he got home, his mother was not exactly very happy. So she tried to persuade him to leave the dog outside, but he didn't want to. So there was a little, mother and son, little tough tussle there. And so when Lord Chaitanya went to bathe in the Ganges, Mama took the dog outside and let him go away. And when Lord Chaitanya came back, he was very upset. But anyway, why don't you keep dogs and cats in your house? What was the reason?
If you have a temple room in your house, you don't necessarily want to let dogs and cats crawl up on the altar and.
I thought we were supposed to be merciful to every living entity, right?
They get the frame.
Isn't that also valid logic?
Yeah.
Well, also too, but we can give it to them in other ways too.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, some things stick out in class. It's fun, unusual things. Yes.
To them through Prashadam, which was actually given as an example with the tiger. That was also something that we read yesterday, that even though the living entity is inside of the tiger, like we don't treat him, we treat him very cautiously. And then it talked about how some of the brahmanas, they'll give him prashadam, but they stay very far away from it.
Yeah, right. In other words, it's a fine point of discrimination, because it's not discrimination. It's a fine point of discrimination, because yes, we say, yes, we should treat everybody equally, dogs, cats, people, this, high, low positions, this and that. We should treat everybody equally. Or we should see everybody equally. We should see everyone as a spirit soul. They're a spirit soul, and everybody has an equal opportunity to make advancement. But by the body that they're encaged in, sometimes they're limited by, they're restricted by that type of thing. So we see them all as spirit souls. We try, but we need to discriminate. Like we don't go up and like embrace a tiger or whatever, thinking, oh yeah, he's a spirit soul. No, go the other way. Okay, we'll go on to today's program. Okay, we're on text 36. Can we have somebody read text 36? Yeah.
Okay. Text 36. The Parusa, whom the individual soul must approach, is the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Brahman and Paramatma. He is the transcendental chief personality. His activities are all spiritual.
Very good. Next one, we're gonna talk about this 37th verse at the end of our series. We'll come back to it.
The time factor, who causes the transformation of the various material manifestations, is another feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who does not know that time is the same Supreme Personality is afraid of the time factor.
That one's worth thinking about. Well, just read it again.
The time factor, who causes the transformation of the various material manifestations, is another feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who does not know that time is the same Supreme Personality is afraid of the time factor.
Okay.
Lord Vishnu, Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the enjoyer of all sacrifices, is the time factor and the master of all masters. He enters everyone's heart. He is the support of everyone. He causes every being to be annihilated by another.
Anything strikes you about that particular verse or sentence?
The last sentence.
Which part of it?
He causes everyone to be annihilated by another.
That's Anything else that might have caught your attention? I'll share with you what it caught my attention was he's the support of everyone. That's, you know what I mean? Yeah, he causes the annihilated by others. That's the process of this and that, but he's the support. We can remember that. He's our support. He's actually our best friend. Because he has our real interest in mind. It's not that you think your best friend's going to make you break your leg or anything like that, right? But if your best friend is all knowing and this and that and all powerful and et cetera, and something is happening to you, it's for our own education. It's for our own good. It's for our own, it might be painful. It might pinch, it might hurt, it might be this, it might be embarrassing, whatever, but we can learn something from it. And if we have that attitude, then those pinchy moments and et cetera, aren't so pinchy. They're learning moments. Okay. So 39, right?
No one is dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
What? Stop there. Now that sounds terrible, doesn't it? No one is dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Does that mean he doesn't like anybody? No. Keep reading. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Nor is anyone his enemy or friend. But he gives inspiration to those who have not forgotten him and destroys those who have.
Whoa. Let's read that one more time, okay?
Yeah. No one is dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor is anyone his enemy or friend. But he gives inspiration to those who have not forgotten him and destroys those who have.
You want to have a little discussion on that? Any thoughts that come up on that? Any questions? Yes.
If that is that would be a personality of God, right?
Yes.
So is that a person? So that a person? I have more so a question than.
That's okay.
So is that a attribute that we should have about people who we associate with, family, friends, whoever? That should be friends or enemies?
That we should not have an enemy or friend, and is that what you're asking?
Yes.
That we should it's a question of again, it applies to what we were just previously talking about. We should see everybody equally. but at the same time, we need to discriminate. You know, we don't go and embrace a tiger or this or that. So we should, the characteristics of a self-realized person is that they don't consider friends or enemies. They don't consider friends or enemies, but at the same time, there's acceptable interactions and not acceptable. It's not that we become a doormat. Let me put it this way. Sometimes we think that if we become humble and we see this and that, we're supposed to accept anything that happens and become a doormat. That's often a person's hesitation or fear like that. Oh, if I don't speak up when someone's being harsh or discriminating or unfair to me, then I'm just like a doormat, and then everyone's just gonna, you know, wipe their feet on my head all the time. You know what I mean? So, but it's not like that. But we have to be detached. We have to be detached in the sense of, yeah, you know, from the situation. But and then also too, there's another aspect of that, another nuance of something like that, is that when someone is harsh or discriminating or unfair or something to us, then we try to maintain, you know, equanimity of mind and be humble and this and that, you know. But if someone's being harsh or unfair or discriminating to another devotee, and we're there, then we should speak up and defend, and we should, you know, try to protect, etc. We should act, you know. But for ourselves, that's one thing. But for a devotee or you know, whatever, then it's another nuance of understanding that. It's another nuance of what humility is, you know.
Perfect question. Perfect
Yeah,
answer.
sure.
Perfect answer. Thank you. Attachment.
Okay. Okay. Yes, thank you.
This verse speaks on like Krishna's like impartiality, I guess that aspect of him. But then I had a question. It was saying, he gives inspiration to those who've not forgotten him. So those who have not forgotten him, I guess that's the devotees. So he does favor the devotees, right? Like those practicing bhakti.
Well, he's okay. Krishna's described. Thank you for that. Krishna's described as he's been described. He's neutral. He's neutral. He's not forcing everybody to surrender to him, and you know, he's giving everybody their individual choice. Do you want to try to surrender to Krishna? Do you want to try to understand God? Do you want to try to understand your position and then he'll give the inspiration, he'll give the association, he'll give the opportunity. And if somebody wants to forget somebody wants to forget him, then he allows that. He allows that, and that allowance is what's actually their activities are what's actually destroying them. He's not particularly destroying them because you've forgotten me, you're being destroyed. But because you're forgetting Krishna, you're going to be destroyed. You know what I mean? It's a little different emphasis there. You know, so it yeah. Advaita, and then Prabhu in the back, which I can't remember his name, and I should, but I don't. Hare Krishna.
This in regards to this last part, wouldn't there be a need to remind those who have forgotten it instead of letting them be destroyed?
Yes, and that's what a compassionate devotee does, because he understands the mission of the Lord. Because he understands the mission of the Lord Krishna's provided the playground here in the material world where the living entities are trying to enjoy separate from him. It's not possible to enjoy separate from God, just like it's not possible for the hand to enjoy separated from the arm. It's not possible. The hand might be thinking, I don't want to raise my hand every single time she wants me to raise my hand. But so he thinks, okay, I'm going to jump off and I'm going to be happy on the floor there. Sorry, it's a little misconception of how things work. You know, the conception is that the hand, you know, raises or this or that. It functions best when it's attached. The living entity functions best, and not only functions best, but it's his or her position to be attached to the Supreme Lord, to be part of the Supreme Lord, to be his servant, is consciously serving him. And when we think, or when that desire arises, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of being stuck on this arm. I want to be separate. Then the Almighty Supreme Lord says, well, okay, it's not going to work very well for you, but if you want to do that, then go over here to this playground that I've created, material world. There's a whole bunch of rules and regulations there, but you can ignore them or follow them or whatever, and try to be happy. So, but he doesn't just leave us there, to rot. He comes, as explained in the Bhagavatam. There's so many times, so many incarnations, and so many forms that Krishna himself comes personally in different incarnations, Varaha, Nrsinga, this one, Vamana, so many things. And he also has innumerable devotees who understand the mission of the Lord that come to try to wake us up also. So, did I cover it, or did I go off topic? Haha.
Yeah, it just sounds a little harsh, that he destroys it.
Yes, but what's he destroying? He's not destroying the soul. He's destroying the mentality of forgetfulness. By what? Oftentimes by the suffering. Because if you suffer enough, you think, what's going on here? Hold on a second. Don't forget. You're young, you won't forget. But he's but he's not. So he's destroying that mentality. That's what's being destroyed. The living end. We're all going to be destroyed in this body sooner or later. Sooner than we think, this body is going to be destroyed. The living entity is going to go on according to the desire, hopefully higher, by the activities that we're doing. So the death of the living entity, the body that the living entity is in, doesn't mean that he's destroyed. The living entity is never destroyed, because that's our basic ABC in Bhagavad Gita. Can't be burnt, can't be this, can't be that, withered, whatever. Yeah. It's eternal, always existing. You always existed in some form or other in the past, and will always exist in some form or other in the future. And all of our misconceptions, once they're destroyed, then we'll be in our position. Okay. And you have to remind me your name, sorry, even though you've done it 500. Huh? Jonathan?
Yes, ma'am.
Jonathan. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jonathan. And so when at the end where it says,
Jonathan, Spirit, Soul, Prabhu. It's okay. It covers everything.
He gives inspiration to those who have not forgotten him. So remembering Krishna is being Krishna conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And he destroys those who have. Forgetting Krishna or being separate from Krishna is Maya. Is that right?
Correct.
So he helps propel those who have a higher stage of consciousness or awareness of him through inspiration towards him. And the ones that have forgotten him, even though he annihilates even maybe their bodies, like at the end of this age, but they still end up gaining liberation and going back towards him, right? So like what the Beta was saying, it sounds kind of harsh. Like, if you forget me, I'm gonna just chop your head off,
Drop the piano on your head.
And drop the piano. But actually, then you're still moving forward towards him. Is that right?
Ultimately, yes. But as one engages in more and more activities of forgetfulness, then they're temporarily going downhill. But gradually, because it's not all downhill, because there's because the Lord, because there's always free will. The living entity always has the opportunity to reconsider their position. And even in the most abominable, lowest species, or not species, but mentality, one can say, maybe there's another thing I should be doing. Maybe there's something else. Maybe there's another way to consider this. Maybe, and the opportunity is to change is there, but otherwise, the point, our point that's being made, just it said, the Lord's neutral. He's not egomaniac, this or that. It's not that he's, demanding these things. He's neutral. If you want to love me, I'll give you facility to try to love me. If you want to forget me, I'll give you that facility too. It's up to your desire. Therefore, and this is one of the very major but very subtle lessons of the Bhagavatam. We are the makers of our own fortune and misfortune. In other words, we are responsible for our position that we're in. It's not my mother's fault that she didn't take care of me nicely when I was a kid, and then I got traumatized, and then this and then that, and then whatever. It's not her fault. Because of my activities, I took birth in a certain situation and had certain things happen to me because of the results of my activities. And my free will is to, okay, perhaps I can't change how my mother treated me when, I'm just using this example, okay, how my mother treated me because she was a nice lady. In case she's listening. I can't change how my mother treated me when I was a child, or whatever that circumstance is that traumatized me. But I can change, I have the ability to change my attitude towards it. Although it might be very difficult, I do have that ability, and I can get the help and the coaching and this and that. But that's the thing that one of the Bhagavatam lessons, we're here because of things that we did. We're often, willing and our first example is, our first reaction is that I was treated unfairly. It's my boss's fault. It's my situation. I didn't have enough money. If only this and this and this, then I would have been that and that and that. That's, not the situation. It's because of things that I've done. These things are happening. All the things, the good things, the bad things, all of them are happening. And how I react to the situation that I'm in will be what's help me in my next life. Did we, want to? And you probably don't know because you're new here to me anyway. Yes. You don't know that I'm really bad at remembering names, but I like to try. So what's your name?
My name is Bruce.
Bruce? Mm-hmm. Now we have two Bruces, right? Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
Not Bruce. It's a Bruce Krishna.
Okay, all right.
I was wanting to, what would Jonathan N. Advaita, Veda said about, the being destroyed. And I was talking to Jonathan yesterday about in the temple about, how the Bible says, people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. And for example, like to ignore something, it's basically, we talking about the root word is, the ignorance, right? The root word is ignore, right? So a lot of times we ignore things and we become ignorant to it. So we had the choice. It's the free will part. You can ignore two things. You can acknowledge thing, get knowledge. Whatever you, it could be any aspect of life, but specifically this aspect of getting close to Krishna.
Very nice, yeah. And there's so many examples of personalities who were in very, very difficult situations in the Bhagavatam. Like, for example, Queen Kunti, mother of the Pandavas. So her prayers are so enlightened, because she's saying, we had this calamity in our life, we had that problem, we had this problem, but I actually pray to have more problems in my life, which is quite unusual, right? I'm praying to have more problems because when I'm in difficulty, I remember God more. I remember you more. So therefore, let me have more problems so that I'm always praying to you. And although it might seem counterintuitive to pray for the problems, but perhaps you've experienced already in your little sojourn here in Krishna consciousness, when there's a real difficult time or anything, the tendency could be, hopefully will be, to pray to Krishna for help. And actually, the intensity, depending on the intensity of the difficulty, it kind of parallels the intensity of the prayer that we make. And so then when things are really, really intense, our prayers are really, really often and really on a high pitch of pleading for his help and mercy. And so she's praying, can I have those situations again and again so that I can remember you again and again? Okay, that I really went off topic on that one. Okay, let's go to 40. Somebody? Yes.
Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the wind blows. Out of fear of him, the sun shines. Out of fear of him, the rain pours forth showers. And out of fear of him, the host of heavenly bodies shed their luster.
And let's go right to the next one because it's a similar. No, there's three of them. So and then we'll discuss those three.
Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trees, creepers, herbs, and seasonal plants and flowers blossom and
Fructify.
each in his own season.
And one more.
Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the rivers flow, and the ocean never overflows. Out of fear of him only does fire burn, and does the earth with its mountains not sink in the water of the universe.
It's interesting, isn't it? Why are we talking about fear all of a sudden? You know, what does that mean? That's what we're going to discuss. Why? How do you react to hearing about those things after we've heard all these wonderful qualities of Krishna? He's so nice. Now the sun shining out of fear of Krishna. What is? Yeah. Thanks. Yes.
Yeah, I don't like the whole concept of fearing God. Like that's just something I never agreed with, was to fear God because God's all loving.
You're correct. Okay, so, and this is the point. Sometimes when we come across these things that make us question what's going on here, we need to like kind of go a little deeper. What's it really meaning? So, I didn't figure this out on my own, but I'm going to tell you something that's quite enlightening. I heard this in a Bhagavatam class from Gauranga Darshan Prabhu. So, that fear that they have, it's not fear of fear of the Lord as what we're that Christian based fear him because he's so powerful, and if you don't do what he says, he is going to drop that piano on your head. You know, not that type of fear. Their fear is their fear of displeasing him in their service. Now just that little nuance of that understanding changes the whole conception, doesn't it? Like I said, I didn't figure that out on my own. I heard it. So I don't want to give you any. But isn't that interesting? The sun is the sun is shining every day the same amount of intensity for billions and billions and billions of years. And it's a service that it's been given. It's a service that that personality of sun has been given to do that. And so so the whole universe is dependent on the pattern of the sun, you know, and he doesn't go an inch out of his orbit this way or an inch out of his orbit that way, because then it will mess up everybody's heat and light, and so he stays in his orbit. So he does it because he doesn't want to he has it as a service, and he has it as a service attitude that I want to do this nicely. And the fruits and flowers and the rivers. In other words, too, another aspect that you might overlook in reading those three verses is that everything's a personality. Everything's controlled by a personality. We're so blinded by an impersonal conception. We don't even realize how impersonal we are, even though we're hearing about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. We're not seeing that there's a person in charge of the air. There's a person in charge of the water, you know, and it kind of like puts our big Hare Krishna puzzle piece together, because in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Krishna says, in the beginning of creation, I sent forth generations of men and demigods, and I told the people how to do sacrifices, and I said, be thou happy by these sacrifices. So in other words, in Vedic times, in traditional Vedic times, there were people acknowledged, they understood that the rain is coming through Indra. So therefore they would do sacrifices or yagyas to acknowledge that it was coming through Indra, to, you know, show their gratitude, whatever, you know. And therefore he would continue supplying rain. And now we're totally thinking that we've got our chemtrails and we're going to control it like this, we're going to do it like that, and this and that, and maybe we'll even desalinate the ocean if we need to. I think they might be doing it to some extent, but There's no concept of a person behind it, and we think that it's all happening automatically, and then we wonder, why is it getting so hot around here? Why there's so many fires these days? Why is there so much disturbance these days? Because we've lost touch with personality. Okay, we still have a few more verses to get to our verse first. I better get going. 43, please. Somebody repeats or acceptable? Yes, Jonathan.
Subject to the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sky allows outer space to accommodate all the various planets which hold innumerable living entities. The total universal body expands with its 7 coverings under his supreme control.
We could talk about that, but I'm going to skip it. Is that all right? Let's go on. 44, please.
Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the directing demigods in charge of the modes of material nature carry out the functions of creating, maintenance, and destruction. Everything animate and inanimate within this material world is under their control.
Inanimate, too, is under their control. Sorry. Okay, one more.
Text 45, the eternal time factor has no beginning and no end. It is a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maker of the criminal world. It brings about the end of the phenomenal world. It carries on the work of creation by bringing one individual into existence from another. And likewise, it dissolves the universe by destroying even the Lord of Death, Yamraj.
That time factor. That's what our verse, we're going to talk about verse 37. And that's also, again, talked about in that verse. The time factor. What can you remember even before we read our verse? What can you remember that you've heard about the time factor? Any little blurb of information, time factor information? Krishna is time. Anything else? Yeah, that's the one. Say it again.
I don't know.
That's all right.
Time I am, destroyer of
Destroyer of
worlds.
the world. Time is a destroyer. I was just going to say that. Yeah, he could see time I am. He read Bhagavad Gita. But anyway. All right, let's go to 37. Since we have so much time left, 10 whole minutes. We don't have to do the Sanskrit. We're independent. I'll say it one time, okay? Because Srila Prabhupada said, chanting the Sanskrit, wait, I forgot what he said. If you chant the Sanskrit, you can become spiritually, not just advanced, but okay, I'll look it up and tell you next week, okay? All right. Rupa Vedashpadam Divyam Kala Ityabhitiyate Bhutanam Mahad Adinam Yatobina Drishambayam. And the translation is, let's say it together in English. The time factor who causes the transformation of the various material manifestations is another feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who does not know that the time is the same as the rate of the time factor who causes the transformation of various material manifestations. What are some of the transformations of the time factor? Yes, birth, growth, old age, disease, and death. Or you can say it in different ways, but birth, we're forced by time. It's pushing us. It's the factor that's pushing us all the time. We're wanting everything to be the same and nice and neat, and we're being pushed. The little baby's growing, this and that, the boy's growing, you youth, and pushed. Okay. Purport. Actually, you know what? I'll just read the purport, since if you even say a sentence, I'll start to interrupt. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada's purport, and you know what? I was born in ignorance, but fortunately, my spiritual master forced open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Therefore, I'm indebted to Srila Prabhupada for eternity, forever, and beg for service at his lotus feet, life after life. So Srila Prabhupada says in his purport, he says, everyone is afraid of the activities of time. But a devotee who knows that the time factor is another representation or manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to fear from the influence of time. So what causes people to be afraid of time? What's the cause? What are some of the causes? What are some of the factors? Yeah, okay, right. Another thing, other causes of fear from the time factor. Death, yeah. And that's not always very pleasant. Is it ever very pleasant? No. Okay. Advaita.
Ignorance or the unknown.
The unknown. The unknown. Yeah. So many things. Yes.
Change.
Change. We don't want it to change. We want it to be the same, don't we? As long as we're in a good situation. You know, yeah, it's true. So what is the indication there behind those things? There's no need to fear, right? Correct. But how do you get to not to fear? Understanding that it's a manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then you can understand. In other words, the fact that we're fearful of time and the fact that we don't like things to change it's a subtle proof that we don't belong here. We belong, this is the temporary material world. Everything's changing. Everything's changing. Even though we want America to be great again, it's certainly not going on a path that's going to make it great again. She said, and she walks out the door and gets shot. Okay, you know what I mean? You know, it's not on a path that's going to make it great again because things are always changing, always changing. How many times has a great empire come into being and thought it was eternally supreme, the greatest, most influential, this and that, and then as the time forces things along, this other power becomes more prominent. This other thing, you know, other factors are there because we don't belong here. We've had an experience, although it was quite some time ago, innumerable, anadi, can't trace out when it happened, that we left the spiritual world, but we had an experience of being in an eternal situation where there is apparent time. There's morning, noon, and night, etc., like that. But the time factor doesn't degrade things. We've had that experience, and therefore we want that again. But what's our problem? We're looking in the wrong place. We're looking for happiness in a place that's certified. It's certified. Krishna, what does Krishna say about the material world in Bhagavad Gita? Dukkha ayam ashashvatam. Dukkha. It's a source of misery. The material. So here I am looking for happiness in this place that's the source of misery. I'm looking to be nice and cool inside the oven. Well, hello, get out of the oven, go into the refrigerator or something, you know what I mean? You know, we're looking in this wrong place. We're looking in the, you know, we're beating our head against the wall, wondering why it's bleeding, because we have to change our perspective. And this is why transcendental knowledge is always compared to light, and ignorance is always compared to darkness. Because in darkness, you can't see things properly. And with knowledge, even if it's a little bit of knowledge, even if it's a little bit, even if it's a reflection, even if it's this and that, it's somewhat helping you make progress. Okay. The phrase Rupa Bedhash Padam is very significant. By the influence of time, so many forms are changing. For example, when a child is born, his form is small. But in the course of time, that form changes into a larger form. And the body of a boy, changes into a larger form, the body of a boy, and then the body of a young man. Sometimes you can see sometimes very large bodied ladies, when they first give birth to their teeny weeny little baby, you think, oh, look at that large bodied person and that teeny little body that came out. And that little body is going to develop to who knows how high or what shape. At that time, you don't know how high that person, how tall that person is going to be or what shape he's going to be. But it's by the time factor being pushed along. Even sometimes in the Alachua temple, there's so many young little kids, and oftentimes, 3 or 4 years old, they're just so cute. They're just so cute, offering their little flowers to Srila Prabhupada or doing the this and the this and the that. And you think, we should just put them in the freezer right now and freeze them at that cute stage of devotional service, as opposed to then they progress to the teenage years and, whatever, and have different challenges, and life gets a little more complicated. Anyway, sorry. Similarly, everything is changed and transformed by the time factor or by the indirect control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is what Krishna has described already in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, time I am. This is when after Krishna shows the universal form to Arjuna, how he's got millions of varieties of forms and personalities, and Arjuna, he gets shaken by that vision. He gets shaken. He gets a little knocked off his little platform, a little bit. And he says, I don't understand who you are and what your mission is. Krishna says, time I am. I'm the destroyer of everything. That's how he certifies what life is like here in this material world. Everything, and we think of it, we've heard so many times, you've been here, if you've been here a few weeks or you've been here a few months or a few years, so many times we've heard, and everything's destroyed at the time of death, and you can't bring anything with you. And you kind of accept that. But when that's happening, that's like the real test of your deepened realization, or how deep your realization of that is. Because everything that we've surrounded, all the comfort, our comfort zone, we've got the room is just right, our whatever, our stipend is just enough to cover what our needs and this and that, and we got the pillow for our back and the brace for our knee and so many things. We've got all the things down that we can survive and make it in the day. And it's all being taken away. And then we also have our plastic cards that, our bank or our credit card, or this, just in case there's some unexpected emergency, we've got something. All of that's taken away. And what to speak of, as the Prabhu was saying, everything's taken away. We're not fulfilled, we haven't fulfilled all our plans yet. No matter how old you are, there's still something in the mind that you want to do, or this or that or whatever. And it's all taken away. And I forgot what I was saying. Okay. Everything is changed. Yeah, okay. Everything is changed and transformed by the time factor or by the indirect control of the Supreme Personality of God. So that time factor, that pushing agent, that's Krishna. It is Krishna and it isn't Krishna. It's indirectly Krishna, but it's under his control. And therefore, in the spiritual world, nothing, well, hold on a second on that thought. Therefore, to try to understand Krishna and his qualities and his potencies, that makes a devotee fearless. Because Krishna's the most powerful. He's in charge of he's in charge of everything that we can see and understand, and all the nuances that we never even considered. He's in charge of those things too. And he's in control of those things. And he can change anything in anyone's mind. And he could do that, yeah. But devotee, but his most famous quality is Bhakta Vatsal. He's the lover. He's the well-wisher of his devotees. Now, that doesn't mean Prahlad Maharaj. It doesn't mean only Sukadeva Goswami, only Parikshit Maharaj. No, that means every single person. And doesn't mean only the Hare Krishna movement. And it doesn't mean only the Krishna house devotees. It means every single person who's attempting in all different phases in their life of coming closer to God. And however that might look in the culture and religious beliefs that they might have at the time, if they're sincerely trying to come closer to the Lord and develop their relationship or understand their position in relation to the Lord, he's there directing their wanderings. And he's encouraging them and facilitating them to make progress. It's sometimes in our in Krishna consciousness, if you look back on your life, you might look back at different times in your life when they're like, how did it get to be 8:34 already? That's not fair. Oh, it's the time factor. That's how come. See how easy it is to forget that? Okay. When we look back on our life, especially during times that were very difficult or challenging or whatever, economically challenging, physically challenging, relationship challenges or whatever, and you go through it and you're experiencing this and that, the mixture of emotions. Some years pass and you look back at, as a devotee, you look back, oh, now I can understand a little bit better. That terrible circumstance, what I thought was terrible at the time, I thought was unfair, I thought was this or whatever, real test, that led me to this, and that helped me. You know, you can see, trace out, in other words, it's called a mercy map. Trace out the mercy that the Lord's already given to you. That helps strengthen your encourage one, and also helps in when the next challenge comes along, because it will come along. Okay, here's my challenge. Oh, good, we're at the end of the purpose. Okay. Usually, we do not see any difference between the body of a child and the body of a boy or the body of a young man, because we know these changes are due to the action of the time factor. There is a cause for fear for a person who does not know how time acts. So, as the body is growing, the little baby's growing, he's a month old, he's this or whatever, Srila Prabhupada would often say, oh, sometimes there's a celebration because now the person's a year old. But actually, what does it mean? It means he's actually a year closer to death, because he has a certain amount of time that's, you know, predestined to be in that body, certain amount of happiness, certain amount of distress. So he's lived a year, he's already a year closer to death. So, but the mentality doesn't end there, you know, and the mood isn't just that, oh, you're, you know, but the mood is that Krishna is very kindly arranging things to bring us closer to him. And that way, that removes the fear of the fear of the unknown, the fear of changes, the fear of lack of stability. All of those things will change when we realize I'm in Krishna's hands. And Krishna is my well-wisher, my best friend. He's supporting me in so many ways. I sometimes am a little hard-headed and I don't learn the lessons that he's wanting me to learn exactly at the, you know, quickly, but he's very kindly arranging things over and over again for our constant improvement in life. And if we see things like that, then it's easier to get through the day with a smile on your face. Hare Krishna. A little bit of comments, since we're already over time, who cares, right? We're ending, don't worry. Comments or Advaita Prabhu?
Yeah, I just want to mention that something that gives me a lot of hope and excitement, that if I look at the time as an asset of value that it's given to me, then I can invest just like any other asset in a good way, or I can just blow it.
Good point.
So, and in a way, that fear of not blowing it, it's a healthy fear.
Yeah.
But trying really hard to find ways to invest my most valuable asset, because, as they say, you cannot bring a moment back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
For
That's
all the wealth in the world.
Yeah, all the wasted time. Wasted time can't be recovered. So very good point. Thank you. That's a great note to end on. So let's try to invest our time in service to Krishna. You know, there are personalities that are going to go out today and distribute thousands of books and talk to hundreds of people and, you know, change this and do that. That's great. All glories to them. And then there are yous and me's, and if we get it through the day remembering Krishna, we'll be doing good. So let's whatever we can do, wherever we're at, let's go forward and try to use our time in the service of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Thank you very kind attention. Vanchakalpa. Trubhya Shakti Pasindhavya Chapakana. Now your favorite. Okay. Swalva Punya Raja Fortunate persons dwell with faith in Mahaprasad, spiritual preference of the Lord, the deep rich tree of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Christ,